today we're going to be talking through the modern penguin classics in this lovely box set that I've got, and just talk through each of the stories that come with it. I got this a while ago. I've only recently brought it down from my dad, so I haven't read many of them, but yeah, let's get straight into it.
First up, we have Letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr. This landmark missive from one of the greatest activists in history calls for direct, non-violent resistance in the fight against racism and reflects on the healing power of love. Next up, we have Television Was a Baby Crawling Towards That Death Chamber by Allen Ginsberg. This is a profane and pathetic verses about sex, death, revolution, and America by the great icon of beat poetry. Then we have The Breakthrough by Daphne du Maurier. A scientist's attempt to solve the mystery of life after death has chilling consequences in this eerie tale from a virtuoso writer of suspense. Then we have The Custard Heart by Dorothy Parker. Wisecracking and heartbreaking, these tales of women on the edge by the legendary wit Dorothy Parker show the darkness beneath the surface of the jazz age. 3 Japanese short stories by Aku Tagawa and others. 3 beguiling, strange, funny, and hair-raising tales of imprisonment, memory, and atrocity from earlier 20th century Japan. Then we have The Veiled Woman by Anae Nin. Transgressive desires and sexual encounters are recounted in these 4 pieces from one of the greatest writers of erotic fiction. Then we have Notes on Nationalism by George Orwell. Biting and timeless reflections on patriotism, prejudice, and power from the man who wrote about his nation better than anyone. Number 8 is Food by Gertrude Stein. From apples to artichokes, these glittering, fragmented, painterly portraits of food by the avant-garde pioneer Gertrude Stein are redolent of sex, laughter, and the joy of everyday life. Then we have The Free Electro Nights by Stanislaw Lem. From a giant of 20th century science fiction, these 4 miniature space epics feature crazy inventors, surreal worlds, robot kings, and madcap machines. Then, from Patrick Kavanagh, we have The Great Hunger. By turns tragic and comic, irascible and exalted, these are some of the best-loved poems by a writer who transformed Irish verse. Then we have The Legend of the Sleepers by Danilo Kiss. Sleepers awake in a remote cave, and the ancient mystic Simon Magus attempts a miracle. In these 2 magical, otherworldly tales from one of the greatest voices of 20th century Europe. Number 12 is The Black Ball by Ralph Ellison. Stories of belonging and alienation, violence and beauty, racial injustice and unexpected kindness from a writer of soaring emotion and lyricism. Till September Petronella by Jean Rhys. 4 searing stories of women lost adrift, down, but not quite out, that span the course of a lifetime, from a Caribbean childhood to ruinous adulthood to old age and beyond. Then, from Franz Kafka, Investigations of a Dog. How does a dog see the world? How do any of us? In this playful and enigmatic story of a canine philosopher, Kafka explores the limits of knowledge. Daydream and Drunkenness of a Young Lady by Clarice Lispector. 3 intoxicating tales of free women, their secret desires, fears, and madness from a giant of Brazilian literature. Number 16 is an advertisement for toothpaste by Ryszard Kapuscinski. The great traveller reporter finds an even stranger and more exotic society in his own home of post-war Poland than in any of the distant lands he has visited. Then we have Create Dangerously by Albert Camus. Camus argues passionately that the artist has a responsibility to challenge, provoke, and speak up for those who cannot in this powerful speech accompanied here by 2 others. 18 is The Vigilante by John Steinbeck. In these searing stories set in California's Salinas Valley, one of America's greatest, most humane writers explores mob violence, a disturbing encounter, and a bitter betrayal. From Fernando Pessoa, we have I Have More Souls Than One. Written in the voices of 4 different alter egos, these rich, strange, and mesmeric verses by Portugal's greatest poet express a maelstrom of conflicted thoughts and feelings. Hitting number 20, we have The Missing Girl by Shirley Jackson. Malice, deception, and creeping dread lie beneath the surface of ordinary American life in these miniature masterworks. Then we have 4 Russian short stories by Gazdinov and others. In these stories, 4 writers, all exiles from revolutionary Russia, explore 4 deaths in a world in which odd certainties have crumpled. From Italo Calvino, we have The Distance of the Moon. These exuberant and endlessly inventive stories interweave scientific fact with wordplay, whimsy, and cosmic flights of fancy in a strange and wondrous universe. Then for 23, we have Audre Lorde's The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. From the self-described black lesbian mother warrior poet, these soaring, urgent essays on the power of women, poetry, and anger are filled with darkness and light. Next up, we have The Skeleton's Holiday by Leonora Carrington. These dreamlike carnivalesque fables by one of the leading lights of the surrealist movement are masterpieces of invention and grand Guggenol humour. Then we have The Finger by William S. Burroughs. A deliberately severed finger, a junkie's Christmas miracle, and a Tangier con artist, among others, features in these hallucinogenic sketches and stories from the infamous Bee Artist. Right in the middle, we have The End by Samuel Beckett as 26. From the master of the absurd, these 2 stories of unnamed vagrants contending with decay and death combine bleakness with the blackest of humour. New York City in 1979 by Kathy Eicher is a tale of art, sex, blood, junkies, and whores in New York's underground from cult literary icon Kathy Eicher. After that, we have Chinua Achebe's Africa's Tarnished Name, electrifying essays on the history, complexity, and appropriation of a continent from the father of modern African literature. Then we have Notes on Camp by Susan Sontag. These 2 classic essays were the first works of criticism to break down the boundaries between high and low culture and made Susan Sontag a literary sensation. Then we have John Berger's The Red Tender of Bologna, a dreamlike meditation on memory, food, paintings, a fond uncle, and the improbable beauty of Bologna from a visionary thinker and art critic. Next up, we have The Gigolo by Françoise Sagan. A middle-aged woman breaks with her young lover, a husband is suspected of infidelity, a dying man reflects on his extramarital affairs in these shimmering, bittersweet tales of desire and disillusionment. Next up, we have Glittering City by Cyprian Equenzi. Untrustworthy, charming, fussy Joe spins tall tales and breaks hearts in this rollicking story set in the sensational city of 1960s Lagos. Number 33 is Jack Kerouac's Peers of the Homeless Knight. Soaring, freewheeling snapshots of life on the road across America from the beat writer who inspired a generation. Why Do You Wear a Cheap Watch by Hans Fallada. Darkly funny, streetwise tales of low-life scripters and ordinary people trying to make ends meet in pre-war Germany. Next up, we have Truman Capote's The Duke in His Domain. This mesmerizing profile of an insecure, vulnerable young Marlon Brando brooding in a Kyoto hotel during a break from filming is a peerless piece of journalism. Number 36 is Leaving the Yellow House by Saul Bellow. A stubborn, hard-drinking elderly woman living in a desert town finds herself faced with an impossible choice in this caustically funny, precisely observed tale from an American prose master. Then we have Catherine Ann Porter's The Cracked Looking Glass. A passionate, unfulfilled woman considers her life and her marriage in this moving novella by one of America's finest short story writers. Dark Days by James Baldwin is next, with drawing on Baldwin's own experience of prejudice in American violently divided by race. These searing essays blend the intensely personal with the political to envisage a better world. Then Georges Simenon has A Letter to My Mother, where his stark confessional letter to his dead mother explores the complexity of parent-child relationships and the bitterness of things left unsaid. We made it to 40, and William Carlos Williams has Death of the Barber. Filled with bright, unforgettable images, the deceptively simple work of William Carlos Williams revolutionized American verse and made him one of the greatest 20th century poets. Then we have Betty Friedan's The Problem That Has No Name. The pioneering Betty Friedan gave voice to countless American housewives who, despite being sold a dream of the perfect home and family, silently wondered, is this all, and set the women's movement in motion. Next, we have Federico Garcia Lorca's The Dialogue of Two Snails. A dazzling selection of the beautiful, brutal, and darkly brilliant work of Spain's greatest 20th century poet, from his beloved gypsy ballads to pieces appearing in English for the first time. And then you can see it's starting to get quite close to the end here and trying to stick them all in the box again. But then we have 43, which is Yuko Tashima's Of Dogs and Walls. Two luminous, tender stories from one of Japan's greatest 20th century writers, showing how childhood memories, dreams, and fleeting encounters shape our lives. Next up we have Javier Moraes, Madame du Deffand and the Idiots. 5 sparkling, irreverent, brief portraits of famous literary figures, including libertines, eccentrics, and rogues, from Spain's greatest living writer. And at number 45, we have The Haunted Boy by Carson McCullers. From a master of Southern Gothic, these moving stories portray love, sorrow, and our search for happiness and understanding. Then we have The Garden of Forking Paths by George Louis Bourget. Fantastic tales of mazes, puzzles, lost labyrinths, and bookish mysteries from the unique imagination of a literary magician. Leading in at 47, we have Fame by Andy Warhol. The legendary pop artist Andy Warhol's hilarious, gossipy vignettes and aphorisms on the topics of love, fame, and beauty. We have Primo Levi's The Survivor. From the writer who bore witness to the 20th century's darkest days, these verses of beauty and horror include the poem that inspired the title of his memoir, If This Is a Man. At 49, we have Lance by Vladimir Nabokov. These free dazzling stories of obsession, mania, and an extraterrestrial nightmare feature all the wit, dexterity, and inventiveness that are the hallmarks of Nabokov's genius. And then last but not least, we have Wendell Berry's Why I Am Not Going to Buy a Computer. The great American poet, novelist, and farmer argues for a life lived slowly and the value of home. So that's it. That's all 50 of the modern classic Penguin books I've got in this box set. All amazing authors, quite a range of people that have wrote these books and not essays and short poems. And I'm really excited to see what people think and which ones you would be picking up first, as they are quite beautiful.